how can we do all of that being responsible stewards of this precious resource in this amazing province of British Columbia, and at the same time have other communities share in the wealth of that resource. That does not mean not allowing larger companies to do whatever they do, but always must operate in a responsible manner that is consistent with these three main areas that you're working on right now and is being developed as we speak. And that involves further manufacturing, and involves my area in particular is saying we have to do more, not only primary manufacturing and shipping out logs and all the other things. I'm not a fan of that.
No.
I believe very strongly that we should be preserving old growth because it has more, from a value perspective, I believe it is more attractive sitting there than cutting it into 2x4s or whatever. And so we have to be very, very careful in terms of, how do we manage all of that going forward and taking into account all those underlying principles.
So I think I just have to preface the answer to this question is that there's a few of us who are thinking this through and building visions and pictures of ways of doing this, but we have not settled on anything yet because we need to understand this collectively and all be able to be a part of it. When you're making this big a change, you don't just have a few people try to push it on everybody. We have to engage the much larger community. We all have to understand and
I
help
agree.
us. That is a principle.
Yeah.
But there is some of us who have been thinking about this quite a bit and building some ways to help others to think, at least as a starting point.
Right.
Our government's policy here has been for some time now is we do have to increase community control and First Indigenous control of tenures and resources in this province. Somehow, forest tenures and a few others, quite a few, we want much more local in-province control. We also want much more in-province processing and value-added type manufacturing of everything, especially the forest sector. I just did a little talk today. A couple of the things we learned when we did the old growth review, and John, I didn't speak about this, but for your audience, in British Columbia, we recently did a review of how we manage our old forests. And we produced, a friend of mine and I were commissioned by or appointed by the provincial cabinet to go out and talk to British Columbia about how do they want us to manage our old forests and our ancient ecosystems. And we produced a document, the Old Growth Strategic Review. It contained 14 recommendations. The cabinet has.
Not to interrupt you, was Gordy involved in that?
Al and I did the review together.
Yeah, the two of you, right? Al Gordy and yourself, right? Okay, yeah.
And so Al and I went and talked to the entire province. We talked to a few thousand people. We got thousands of submissions.
From all different areas and segments.
Everyone.
Yeah.
Everyone. And we looked at all of it, and we came up with what we realized that this is not just about old growth. It's actually about the way we look at land.
Right.
Our view was we have the wrong lens when we're managing. We're thinking individual resources, and we should start thinking much more whole and looking after ecosystems.
Correct.
We heard that, and we heard that right across the province from everywhere.
Right.
So part of the things we did learn in that, though, is that if we get more local control and more local value-added processing, our jobs per meter have gone down by 50% in the last little over a decade in this province.
Correct.
And the cut hasn't changed.
Yeah.
So that's all mechanization. That is all shifting to predominantly clear cut and quick processing and whipping it out and selling it off. That's
Correct.
what that is.
Correct.
And we know that by increasing the value, doing much more gentle to the land practices that take care of all the other values, we can get up to 5 times that employment by doing it right.
I
And we
agree.
also know in the value added sector, the value added folks have done a couple preliminary studies, and what they tell us is that British Columbia is getting about 1/3 the jobs per cubic meter as other jurisdictions are getting in the value added sector because of the policy limitations that we have. And so there is a group of us now looking very carefully at this. What industry do we want in the future? It needs a certain amount of primary, a certain amount of secondary, and a certain amount of the high value. What's the percentages of those? What's the supply chains we need? How do we keep more wood internal and move it properly? What policies do we need to make that happen?